I'm Cameron Gelman, and I play Rick Tyler. My character, Rick, is impulsive, intense, aggressive, lonely. Time is so important to Rick because he lost time with his parents. You know, you meet him at a time where he isn't working towards anything and is just sort of stuck. Doesn't really have people that he cares about or that care about him, and doesn't have guidance in his life. He's the guy that you meet and really don't know if he's gonna amount to anything or find his way, but is struggling so much with not liking who he is and with his identity that I think you want to root for him. Hourman's powers are 1 hour of super strength, which is limited now, but I'm working really hard to unlimit it. Super strength's awesome. I throw cars at people, I punch through walls. You know, it's super everywhere. So it's like I can not fly, but I can really jump.
Hello and welcome to DC Daily. I'm Clark Wolf, and today I'm joined by Amy Dallin and Sam Levine. Hey, y'all.
Hey, Clark.
Hello. So nice to see your beautiful faces. We are almost halfway through this season of Stargirl, and it has been so much fun. Today's episode, Hourman and Dr. Midnight, gives us more JSA, more ISA, and more 66 Mustang. And later in the show, Amy is going to sit down with Geoff Johns for a deeper look at this episode.
So much to get into. I cannot wait for that.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's dive in. Rick is our new Hourman, and there's a lot of mystery that kicks off at the top of this episode with Rex Tyler. What was your take on how Rick and Hourman was revealed in this episode?
I mean, first of all, it is just fun to be having any conversation about a television show with Hourman on it. I do have to say a big takeaway for me on this one is like, maybe be careful who you give super strength to?
Yeah, I agree. He made it pretty clear at the end of the episode. He's like, I'm not out for justice, I'm out for revenge. I'm like, I know you are teenagers and your judgment is not what it should be yet, but that sounds bad.
This is a really, really interesting thing that Courtney is going to have to grapple with as the leader of this team. The idea that this kid's going, no, I have power, great. I want to mess some stuff up. Like, that's a really interesting choice, and I think that that's going to play out over the rest of the season. But, like, I loved that choice. I thought it was very, very cool.
I will say this, in the annals of superpowers, I found the idea of, super strength, but only for an hour. I found that to be really, like, legitimately funny in thinking about it. Like, it's in his name, the limitations of his power. Can you imagine if we didn't call him Superman, instead we called him, it's Kryptonite Weakness Guy over there. Yeah.
Kryptonite Weakness Guy.
So
that's
you
funny.
make a great point.
Yeah, Amy, can you explain a little bit of this? Give us some context, because I thought it was a little silly myself.
The most important part of it is a thing that is a staple of my enjoyment of this show, which is vintage golden age weirdness. I love it anytime it shows up. I love that DC is like, nah, this is our history. Realistically, I also have always thought that Hourman's powers, while they seem a little strange out of context, they're a great example of world building and sort of sci-fi or supernatural writing where some of the most interesting advantages are the ones that come with limitations, like magic that has rules, powers that have a weakness. That's a classic staple of writing interesting superhero conflicts. But Sam, you're not totally wrong.
Okay, not
Name-wise.
crazy.
Let's talk about Beth. We haven't spent a ton of time with her. She's been around, but we don't really know much about her. And in this episode, she is right there in the middle of everything.
I've sort of been like watching Beth in the background during the show, being like, can't wait for the Beth stuff. Gotta be more Beth stuff. Partly because comics knowledge, but also just because I may or may not relate to her with the parties are loud of it all. Some of us were those teens.
Some of us are those
It is interesting because she's playing a version for me of the classic I caught you superheroing and I'm going to investigate and figure out what's going on here, which doesn't usually look like busting into somebody's bedroom. She can't leave well enough alone. She has to solve the mystery of Rick. She has to figure out what's going on with the people she saw at the hospital. And also, she's just a lonely kid. Okay, that's my I love Beth speech.
Look, she's an interesting, fun character. I think that there is an inherent sweetness to her character. She might be like the moral driving force of the group.
Also, I think there's a lot of room for her to have a really cool arc. Hopefully, these new friends will be a nice influence on her as she kind of comes into her own and starts to relate to more kids her own age. So there's a lot of sweet potential there for sure.
Yes, and I'll say this. I do hope that at some point she reveals something in the realm of, like, good intuition or something like a superpower, because right now her only superpower is repeating what the magic goggles tell her.
Yes.
They do say she got them working. We don't really see how she did that. But.
Right, she got them working, so I'll give her that. But right now she reminds me a lot of Sigourney Weaver in Galaxy Quest, who keeps complaining the whole movie, the only job I have is repeating what the computer says. It's stupid, but I'm gonna do it.
That is a very, very good analogy, Bad Sam. Well done. But I did want to point out, speaking of the goggles, the voice that is speaking to Beth through those goggles is voiced by none other than Henry Thomas, who we did see in the premiere as Dr. Midnight. We've talked a little bit about the sort of Amblin-esque, 80s vibe that this show has with the classic cars and the classic music and small town America. And what an amazing, really clever nod to that era and to that generation, casting Henry Thomas.
I think that might have gone straight over my head, actually, if you hadn't pointed it out. That's very well done, show.
Yes. Hats off to the casting team.
All right, well, let's talk about some villains. More ISA villains are revealed. How many villains live in this crazy town?
I'm not going to Nebraska anytime soon, not until they figure out this villain problem.
No siree, not happening.
Too many villains.
No siree, too many villains. So we've had strong hints so far that Principal Bowen might be the new Fiddler. That sequence at the end also shows us the man in the theater, who we might have some guesses on who that is.
I have a guess.
Yeah?
He is a lost background actor from Swamp Thing.
Yes.
Who was, I'm just looking for some turtle soup. Oh, what's this? Go up to Nebraska? Well, all right. I hear the crime up there is ready to happen. And that's how he got there. I want a spin-off show for him tomorrow.
Agreed.
I don't care what happens with this character. I watch him every day.
Good profile fits for that guy from classic villains of the JSA, but we don't officially know what the deal is there yet. Fiddler's scary though, right?
So do we think she's really bad? Meaning, do you? Am I Amy just looked at me like I was crazy? I don't know. There was just something I was getting a vibe from her. Maybe I just don't want Principal Bowen to be bad.
Listen,
I don't know.
Clark,
That's fair. I usually look for the best in people. This is the one time that I'm like, nah.
Yeah. I know, Clark, that you are a hardcore supporter of the arts.
Indeed.
But in this instance, I don't care how beautiful that fiddle music is.
She bad.
She bad.
She bad. Okay. When Amy looks,
rob the truck.
I don't know. When Amy looks at you no, girl, no, then that's when you know. Okay, instincts were right off.
She's not trying to stop him from shooting that hypnotized guard guy. I'm just saying.
True. All right, before we go to Amy's conversation with Geoff Johns, what are our final thoughts about this episode? What's up with Henry?
That thing that he had at the party where he was hearing voices or whatever, is he taking on some of his father's traits? Maybe. It certainly seems like the show is saying there's a lot of genetic transference from parent to child when it comes to these powers. So is that where they're going with this? Maybe. I don't know.
I am mostly excited in this episode because last episode we had a team up, a proper superhero team up and an origin story. And this episode we have a full-on JSA.
Yeah.
It has happened so fast, but we have an actual team of young superheroes. It is very delightful. I mean, assuming Rick doesn't go wild and who knows.
Speaking of, though, Ames, Pat knows that Courtney took the JSA items, so what's he gonna do?
I don't know, but I gotta tell you how much I loved him pulling out that Green Lantern. It was very cool. I'm very excited to see what Pat does next, now that he's in the know.
Well, so much happened in that episode, and Amy, you're about to talk through it with Geoff Johns, so please ask him everything for us.
Oh, I will.
But first, here's a behind-the-scenes look at Episode 5, Hourman and Dr. Midnight.
I'm Angelica Washington, and I play Beth Chapel and Dr. Midnight. My character, Beth, is very inquisitive. She's kind of going on this journey in high school, trying to figure out who she is, and her friends, and her parents, and her life, and she has no idea where she's going, but she is up for a wild ride. Dr. Midnight's powers are, I can see literally anything. Like right now, if I was wearing my goggles, I would be able to look at your shirt and be like, I know where that came from, I know how much you paid for it, I know where you got those glasses, I know what toothpaste you use, I know what contact solution you use, I know your shampoo, I know where you got those shoes from, I know where those pants, every single thing. I could do x-ray vision, night ray vision, any vision that I want. She actually kind of sees like how she can fit in and be of value to Courtney and how she can be a friend, but not only just a friend, but be a part of the team and really like help be of value to the Justice Society. While everyone else has a lot of like physicality, Beth has the brains.
Welcome back to DC Daily, Geoff. I was so excited to talk about Hourman and Dr. Midnight.
Me too. Let's do it.
Okay, so I may or may not have immediately decided that Beth was my fave on this show. So this might or might not have been a really satisfying episode for me personally. When you all were approaching what you were going to do with Stargirl, with this show, how did you decide who to use for your new JSA?
You know, with Yolanda, I had mentioned last time, I really always loved that character and wanted an opportunity to work with her. So that was kind of the very first one. What drew me to Hourman and Dr. Midnight as a duo is that one was so physical and one was so cerebral. To me, they were the Green Lantern and Flash of the JSA because they just paired well together. They looked cool together. They both had different personalities and different powers. And also, the thing that fascinated me about them was that there was never a Silver Age Hourman or a Silver Age Dr. Midnight. And I always wondered why. There was a Silver Age Atom and Flash and Green Lantern. But why not Dr. Midnight? Like, why not Hourman? Why didn't they have like the reboot in Showcase? Like Showcase number 32 was the new Hourman. It never happened. So when we talked about this and we had Yolanda and Hourman, I really wanted to use some characters that, you know, I'd never had the chance to work with before. And Beth Chapel was one of them. And obviously we've reinvented that character a lot. But because she hasn't been around in a long, long time in the comics, it gave us some latitude to develop her and present a different portrayal of her that, you know, we still tie her to, like, you know, her mom's a doctor and there's still some ties there, like the original Beth Chapel from Infinity Inc. You know, she was kind of like the last piece of the puzzle.
She's kind of, I'm just going to say, kind of Tim Draked her way into this situation by being like, oh, I think you're a superhero. Let's do this.
First off, I have to say and commend you that you made Tim Drake a verb, which is the coolest thing ever. Tim Drake's my favorite Robin. He always has been. He's such a great character. I love him. And she does have a little Tim Drake in her, doesn't she? Courtney picks Yolanda and she picks Rick because he actually is Hourman's son. Like, it only worked for him anyway. And Beth finds the goggles herself and works her way into this and I think proves by the end of it that she's a part of the team. And you can see at the end, Courtney's accepting it. Like, she's standing with Beth and Yolanda saying, this is the team and you need to help me. And then we drop the other side of it where Rick says, no justice. I want revenge. And I love that moment because Courtney looks at Yolanda and Beth is like, maybe we shouldn't have done this.
Rick is a really interesting addition to this team because his motives obviously are not simple. What makes a complicated approach like that something helpful to add to the show?
All these characters are kind of struggling with something. And Rick really has been struggling for a long, long time. And the pain of losing his parents in an accident and stuck with his uncle who really blames him for his bad choices, you know, and Rick's trying to just move through the day and he's angry and a loner. And when he's given this power and told, like, your father was Hourman and this works for you, you know, he's been kicked around a lot. And the first thing he wants to do is kick back. And then giving him an hourglass that makes you super strong for an hour. It's almost the opposite of Yolanda, where her suit helps her get free and get out there again. Is it maybe inflames his pain and lets it come out in ways that aren't productive. And that's something we're going to have to see if he can deal with. And we get much more into it as the season progresses. But to me, it makes Rick a compelling character. And the fact that he's not like, I'm going to be a hero like my dad. I think that's really compelling and intriguing. And it allowed us to tell stories that are different than typical superhero stories. And we'll see we'll see that right away. And then the very next episode, you'll see more of that.
We get a lot of information in the glasses. We hear Keystone City, we hear Civic City, and we get a JSA 1941 through 2010. Now, I'm assuming I read that right in the glasses?
Yes. So the JSA, I mean, we haven't outright said it, but in our minds, the Justice Society, they've existed since the 40s, just like they have in the comics. And there's, multiple reasons, like in the comics, that they haven't aged or that they were active this long. That's part of our history that we'll continue to explore. To me, they have to have existed in the 40s. Otherwise, they're not the JSA.
Would they be famous in the world? Would people have heard of them?
Yeah, people definitely have heard of them. Like, they just haven't been around for a while, so they don't come up in everyday conversation. They weren't out there every day, but they were heroes that existed, and people know them and remember them. We also mentioned a very obscure hero, the Red Bee, who's one of my very favorites. And we have some ideas for that later, which is crazy. James and I came out with some stuff, but it's fun to have that, that history to it. But it was really important for us that the JSA existed in the 40s.
Well, the JSA is coming into existence once more. I feel like if last episode was the team up, this is the team. It's coming together.
This is just about, almost. Not quite, but yeah.
If Rick can stay on the good side of things.
Yeah, I think, I'm excited for everybody to see next episode because it's going to get their heart pumping in a good way.
Embodying a superhero is a complete and total honor. I grew up watching every superhero movie that I could. I looked up to those characters and I always wanted to be like them. And now to be one of them it's just really humbling and means a lot to me because I know that there are going to be a lot of kids watching this show and that we're representing a generation of superheroes who were and are just normal people that were struggling and very imperfect, but were called to be better and rise to it. And also, I'm a type 1 diabetic. There have been so many times that having health issues has made me feel very alone. And I just am so ecstatic for kids that are growing up with this disease and really anybody that has health issues of any kind, whether it's mental or physical, to know that they can be superheroes too. If I had that when I was first diagnosed, I think I'd have had a lot more hope than I did. So I'm doing this sort of always feeling that.
That was so much fun. I wish we had infinite time to just be like, all right, exactly which issue should we be looking out for all of these teases that you're clearly planting all over the show. But we'll just have to come back next time.
That was such a great conversation, Amy. And thank you, Geoff Johns, for talking through some of these really fun moments from this episode. You can catch up on Stargirl on DC Universe right now. That's it for us today. We'll see you next time. Bye.